morning, good afternoon, and welcome to a new exciting edition of the GS1 Healthcare Providers webinars, where we're going to explore the benefits of implementing GS1 standards in the hospital environment. I am your host, and it's my pleasure to guide you through this enlightening journey today. Before moving on to the presentation, I would like to briefly remind you of the GS1 competition law caution, which all GS1 meetings are operated. Remember that the purpose of the group is to enhance the ability of all industry members to compete more efficiently. This means there shall be no discussion of prices, allocation of customers, products, boycotts, refusals to deal, or market share. If any participant believes the group is drifting toward impermissible discussion, the topic shall be tabled until the opinion of a council can be obtained. The full caution is available via the link below in case you would like to read it in full. And now we're going to delve into today's webinar, into the incredible value that the Scan4Safety can bring to hospitals. We will explore the rationale for implementation and how this innovative approach can enhance operational efficiency, can reduce costs, and also saving precious time that can be spent on the most important, on patient care. We will unlock the power of increased visibility into hospital resources, ensuring that everything is available exactly where it should be. As we navigate through the content today, we will better understand the critical role that traceability, supported by GS1 standards, plays in the packaging of medical products. It's not just about efficient logistics, it's about ensuring the safety and well-being of the patients. So today we have with us two exceptional speakers who bring a wealth of expertise and experience from Tallaght University Hospital. Today we are honored to have with us David Ali. David Ali is Deputy Director of Finance. With a seasoned background in hospital finance, his expertise in resource allocation and budgeting has played a crucial role in Tallaght University Hospital success. And we will also have John Donovan, Head of Inventory and Logistics. John's proven track record in optimizing inventory management within hospital settings has led to innovative solutions that stimulate supply chains, ensuring that critical resources are always available when and where they need it the most. So together, David and John today will provide you with a dynamic and comprehensive perspective on the topics at hand. Sorry. So without further ado, let's dive into the world of Scan4Safety and the world of GS1 standards and the incredible potential they hold for healthcare providers. Thank you for joining us today, and let's start with a short video first.
Here at Tallaght University Hospital, one of our strategic aims is digital-enabled care. And by that I mean changing how we do things using technology. Scan4Safety has been a key delivery of that. It has reduced the inefficiency of paper. It has given time back to patient care, which is a key priority, as well as actually being good value for money.
The system has completely changed the way I work. It has given me so much more time to care for my patients and to manage my team. The benefits of having traceability in place is patient safety. The system will notify us if anything's expired or recalled before we use it.
The Genesis Scan4Safety system at Tallaght University Hospital enables full traceability from the manufacturer to the patient. So you're removing manual paper-based processes and replacing them with contemporary, efficient digital processes. The hospital has approximately €20 million per annum on spend in relation to consumables and implants. We needed far greater control in terms of visibility and traceability. The key success factors for the rollout of Scan4Safety was having over 95% compliance with GS1 barcodes. We also had a strong executive management team support from the very start. Nursing staff were fully engaged in the process, and they were instrumental in the successful rollout of Scan4Safety.
There's also a huge advantage in having traceability of the implants that we put into patients. If there is any recalls, we have that information at the touch of a button now, whereas Previously, we would have to trail through theatre registers and implant books to find that information.
I've used Scan4Safety now since 2019, and what I really like about it is that it's user-friendly. We don't have to wait as long for stock to come in. As we're scanning, it's highlighting that we're using something, so it's always on the shelf, so we're not waiting days for something to come in. Now it's there, ready for us to use.
Scan4Safety has taken massive pressure off us. I used to have to spend hours doing stock levels, writing out stock lists, inputting it on the computer and liaising with purchasing in stores. So now I can concentrate on doing what I do, which is looking after patients and looking after my staff. So it means that there's more of a flow of patient care, patient lists and staff welfare.
The introduction of Scan4Safety Genesis technology now means we can use reports for inventory management. We can see valuations, we can see levels, we can set levels, we have history. This means it's keep the inventory lean, and all that information is key to managers and supply chain management to make decisions for the hospital.
Scan4Safety was rolled out in our general and vascular theatres in 2019. We are now live in 7 different areas across the hospital. We hope in 2022 to finish off orthopaedics, and in 2023 we will complete the theatre rollout.
Scan4Safety has been a total success in Tallaght University Hospital. It's compliance, it's traceability, safety. It improves the lead time from possibly 9 to 10 days down to 2 days. And the journey now is to look at the digital patient records and how we can complement that system. But the overwhelming feeling is great satisfaction that it's a successful implementation, and the clinicians and stakeholders are all happy.
Okay, and after this brief intro, it's my pleasure to give the floor to our guest speakers today, John and David.
You can hear me okay there, guys?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to start the PowerPoint presentation here. So you can see that?
Yes, John.
Yes, thank you. So thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is David Addy, and I'm here with my colleague John Donovan, and we will talk you through our slide deck over the next 15 or 20 minutes, which really reflects our journey on Scan4Safety here in Tallaght University Hospital. So just the agenda for today, just an overview and background about the hospital, where we were in 2019 when we got going with this project, the rationale for the implementation, the Scan4Safety solution, progress to date, and along the way certain challenges we've had, outcomes, sample reports from our Scan4Safety system, critical success factors, and we'll finish the session with a question and answer session. So just before I go, I suppose the first thing I'd like to say on that slide, I suppose that's our, and we started this rollout 4 years ago in 2019, and we had a very small team because it was a proof of concept. We didn't do a big bang approach. We started very small in 2 theatres with a small dedicated team. And I suppose that photograph there reflects a multidisciplinary team. It's finance, ICT, nursing, and supply chain. So I suppose that from the very get-go, it was multidisciplinary. It wasn't necessarily finance driving this. It was what we'd like to refer to as a quality initiative, and it wasn't a finance initiative, but stakeholders from across the organisation. So just a little bit about Tallaght University Hospital. I understand that the audience today is from far and wide. So we are a Dublin-based hospital. In Dublin, Dublin is the capital city in the Republic of Ireland. So you can see us there. We're located on the eastern seaboard. So there's effectively 5 large public hospitals in Dublin, and we are one of those 5 large public hospitals located in southwest Dublin. So a little history or information on Tallaght University Hospital. We have multiple specialties, both perioperative and medical. There are currently 495 adult beds in the hospital, 67 paediatric beds, and 21 ICU beds. And I suppose our population is growing all the time, so the hospital is growing all the time. The hospital is 25 years old, but the footprint of the hospital never stops growing. As I said, we've gone from 12 theatres. Historically, we now have 16. And we're growing across the hospital. We have ICU beds. We previously had 9 ICU beds. We now have 21. Renal dialysis, we had 12 beds. We now have 24. So growing population, aging population. So the hospital is continuing to grow, which was all the more important that we had a digital solution as our requirement for supply chain. Our spend grew in medical and surgical supplies. It made it all the more important that we had a digital solution. Just some information or some background into Scan4Safety. We here in Tallaght Hospital, we went to the United Kingdom, the NHS, and we seen the Scan4Safety was taking place there in 2017, 2018, 2019. So they had a bit of they were established a little bit in advance of us. So we had a couple of site visits. We went to some GS1 conferences. So we seen the lay of the land, and we seen what was happening in the NHS in the United Kingdom. So we were saying that would really work for us because it ticked a lot of boxes for us around efficiency and patient safety. So one of our pillars in our hospital strategy is digital enablement. So again, having that Scan4Safety technology and operational productivity and patient safety was fundamental to what we're trying to do. And nationally as well, our own HSE, Health Service Executive, patient safety strategy, it made a lot of sense. So Tallaght University Hospital and GS1, I suppose Tallaght University Hospital has a long history with GS1. We work very closely together, our colleagues Siobhan Duggan and Amanda Crean in our Dublin branch. So we've been working together for the last nearly 15 years. The hospital has a track and trace system with reusable devices up in our theatre and endoscopes. So again, the GS1 were always on board to support and help us there. TUH implemented a ward inventory management system to manage stock at ward level, and again, GLN labeling supported by GS1. GS1 Ireland provided barcode training in 2018, and the Scan4Safety program kicked off in 2019, and GS1 were very much with us along the way. So it's a kind of effectively a mutually beneficial relationship. Both parties adding value to each other, and as you've seen in the video, with the work of GS1 and the work that they do, we reckon around 95% barcode compliance in terms of all our products. And I think if you went back 5-10 years, that compliance level just wasn't there. So it's down to the work that GS1 do and the quality of the GTINs, and that work now is ongoing with GS1. And I suppose even with that 5% that we don't have, GS1 help us touch base and with our vendors in terms of the priority and how important it is that we get those last 5% of barcodes to get us up to 100% compliance rate. Where we were, this is you, Jonathan. Yeah. I'll just hand over to my colleague John Dublin, just in terms of where we were when we started this journey in 2018, 2019.
Thanks, Dave. So before 2019, before we implemented Scan4Safety, the clinical staff at the hospital were spending a large proportion of their time managing inventory. So effectively, nurses were going with their pen and paper into the storerooms, working out what they need for the week, go back to a computer, going into the staff finance system, entering the requirements, then they'd go and get that requisition approved by a manager. Then the goods are coming back in, and they to physically check everything in, taking the delivery docket, validation against what's physically there against what's on the docket. And not only that, then they had to put away. So I suppose, it was all manual, cumbersome, and a lot of time spent for nursing. In relation to manual systems, then you're very familiar with the book system, the ledger system, where we implant stickers from implants. So this is all manual again, taken from the packaging during and before procedures. The issue with this is that when there's a recall, we have to pull these books back and locate the lot numbers that are being recalled, and the risk is that we'd miss one. Another issue we had at the time was around lot and expiries. We had no system to manage the lot and expiries. So it's left down to nursing, and where they're prepping for procedures, they're looking at packaging. And sometimes the manufacturing date and the expiry date very close together, so mistakes can be made. But they have no system to manage that. But now with this system, we can press a button and we can see anything due to expire, etc. But the risk was they'd use a product in a procedure that was out of date. They had no systems for stock levels. So they're using their experience to try and ascertain what they need to order. So it ended up in situations where there's too much stock, too little stock. and they hadn't time to manage that. So that was an issue as well. So just to recap, a lot of manual systems and manual processes, inputting requisitions on the finance system manually, records of implants and manual books, and no system to manage the lot and expiry. So I suppose what were we going to do? So what were the options? So we could leave things as they were and leave it as status quo and avoid this investment that we need to make, which would have left us in a situation, as we're saying, with the clinical staff on the supply chain management tasks, lack of control over consignment stock, which Dave will talk around in a later slide. The finance team with lack of management information for patient level costing, no visibility of stock across the hospital, one stock take a year, and literally writing down what was found, and now we're using Excel, of course, but then a manual pricing exercise at the end. Not ideal. We weren't in compliance with EU legislation. We couldn't achieve those cash savings, no point of care traceability, and then we've no optimized stock levels and a higher clinical risk associated with the obsolete products, again, with being something out of date being used in the procedure. So why did we implement the system? What was the rationale? So one of our key strategy pillars of our strategy was digital enablement. So that tied in exactly what we were doing. Patient safety was a no-brainer. It was a key component. We had inventory management efficiencies, which is about good levels, etc., out-of-date stocks, managing them. The purchase-to-pay system, again, Dave alludes to this in time. So we're using a bucket code in orthopedics that was pre-given to vendors, and then we'd all the retrospective invoices coming in the back end for approval. So possibly getting in without pre-approval, which is an issue. We need to be compliant with medical device regulations, and then of course issue with nursing retention and recruitment. So obviously safety and medical devices is a huge issue. And I suppose the two major recalls that have occurred have been the PWI hip implant recall and the mesh recall, very serious incidents. So obviously legislation is important. So recent European legislation mentioned that health institutions are legally bound to maintain a record, preferably electronically, of each class 3 device. And the second part of this regulation was around mandatory unique device identifiers to be used, UDIs. So I suppose to recap then, Scan4Safety technology helps achieve the compliance to the directives as discussed, which are the digital records of implants and patient procedures. So Scan4Safety does exactly what the regulation requires. So down to nursing retention and recruitment, and even prior to COVID-19, the nursing profession was under huge pressure. Nurses were suffering from burnout from stress. COVID-19 exacerbated that issue. So they were needed support. So according to the World Nursing Report, they recommended that we invest in nursing and provide innovative solutions to support the profession. And furthermore, they also recommended, that with urgent requirement to implement digital solutions to free up nursing time to concentrate on patient care. And that's exactly what Scan4Safety did.
Yeah, so just in terms of how we got started back in 2018, 2019, as I said, we started small. We started with it, obviously, we're a public entity and our funding is quite tight. So we had a business case. Everything in the hospital gets done on a business case basis. We got that business case approved on a proof of concept in 2 theatres. So our clinical director at the time operated outside of those theatres. So it made sense to start there. He gave us that support. The board and the CEO were on board with us. And I suppose like any change management, any initiative like this, it's really important to have top-down management support, or we find it's most likely not to be successful. Our standards partner, as we spoke about previously, GS1, they came in with us multiple times to see how we were getting on, to see what the challenges we were having, and to offer their kind of professional advice and what we should be doing. Our technology partner was a big decision we had to make early on in our proof of concept. We went with a company who happened to be Irish, Genesis Automation, and they're based in Cork, but they were well established in the NHS in the UK. And we brought in multiple vendors at the time, but Genesis seemed to want the business and their products seemed better for us. But there are multiple vendors out there in the marketplace, but we partnered with a company called Genesis Automation. And then resources, we established the Scan4Safety project team. Obviously that that department, if you will, didn't exist before 2019, and a Scan4Safety steering group through this proof of concept phase. We didn't necessarily have new employees for the proof of concept. We kind of begged and borrowed and stole from different, and we had redeployment, and we reorganized a few of our departments. So we got a kind of a working group going, and that working group was around 5 people now. So we've managed to, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've managed to create this new department called Scan4Safety, which is up to around 8 people now. But I suppose 5 of those people were redesigned. So it's probably an additional 3 whole-time equivalents in the last 4 years. And I suppose what we found is, coming back to my initial point about it's actually a quality initiative. So although it's finance-led, but there's multiple stakeholders, and nursing are instrumental and key in this organisation. So we had to work very closely with our nursing colleagues to make sure whatever we were putting in place was as good, even though the processes that were in place were manual, they were actually good processes, and the product came in and was on the shelf, and it was always there for the patient. So we had to maintain whatever we were replacing this manual paper-based process with, even if it was digital, it had to work. So and then we obviously in the rollout, we would always host our regular sessions with our nursing colleagues. For example, in theatre on a Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, that's the session where all the theatre nurses are brought together. So we were invited along many Thursday mornings to explain what we were doing, and that happened pre and post rollout. So again, there's many facets to this Scan4Safety, but for us in Tallaght, the nursing, the dynamic and the engagement and the communication between the Scan4Safety team and nursing was one of the most important. Incremental progress today. So I suppose we didn't go with a big bang approach. As I said, we started with a proof of concept 4.5 years ago. And so in 2018, we selected our Scan4Safety partner, which I said was Genesis Automation. And once we had them in place and the business case was signed off for the proof of concept, we did our initial proof of concept in general and vascular theatre, 2 theatres. That was in October 2019. So exactly 4 years ago when we went live. As I said, we didn't go with a big bang approach. We had this incremental approach, and we rotated through the theatres. Quarter 4 2019, the proof of concept, as I said, general surgery. Around 9 months later, because of COVID, our theatres were kind of half closed, and it was difficult to make progress in theatre. So we had to change the tack, and we ended up in our cardiac cath lab, and that wasn't initially planned, but it was actually very good for us because it was very different in theatre, and we had a lot of consignment models, products and stock and implants that we wouldn't envisage within theatre. So that was good, and that was very successful. And each time the clinical nurse managers in the area were so happy with what we put in, they were discussing with their other colleagues. We were getting communication back from other areas of the hospital saying, when can we have this? So it was really it was self-evident, I guess, that what we were doing was good, and it was an improvement of what we were doing. As I said, the nurses weren't necessarily, they weren't just concerned that we were taking her work away that they didn't necessarily want to do, but we were making sure it was better and it was safer than what was happening in the first instance. From then we went into our vascular theatres, 2 theatres in vascular. We had a brand new off-site surgery open to the state of the art, 4 new theatres, and in January 2021. So we had our Scan4Safety system go from day one there. So, and that was a challenge as well, because it was multiple specialties that we hadn't even come across yet. So we had to get that going. March 2021, we went into endoscopy. We had 5 suites in endoscopy. In November 2021, we went to urology theatres by 2. And again, each time rolling out as quick as we can. There was a bit of a gap then between November and September 22, 10 months, say. Orthopedics. Our biggest success, but also our biggest challenge to date, Tallaght University Hospital has a huge orthopedics business, 4 theatres, and the master data was quite onerous and significant on a scale that we hadn't really experienced in the previous rollouts. And in the last month, we finished off our theatres, and we've full coverage of all 16 theatres now. Our last theatre with PEDS, Gynae and ENT. So it's great to get that over the line in the last And then from a Scan4Safety perspective, in terms of final rollouts, we have interventional radiology in Q1 next year. So that will kind of finish off our kind of rollout, and we will just be in a managing phase after that. Progress to date, as I said, Scan4Safety live in about 90% of the hospital, 16 theatres, cath lab, endoscopy, what you've seen on the previous slide. Scan4Safety managed supply chain, no nursing involvement. John has alluded to this, and it was a huge thing for our nurses that they had the time to get back to managing patients and managing nurses and doing the kind of management and leadership duties that are required of them as nurse managers. Automatic replenishment of stock. As I said, it was all manual beforehand, and our nurses would order something. It would sit on our SAP system until one of our buyers would actually take that requisition and turn it into a purchase order. So there's always a delay of 2, 3, 4, 5 days, depending on which vendor, because our buyers worked off a certain schedule of when certain vendors were done. So you could be waiting nearly up to a week sometimes just to get your purchase order out, where with the automatic Genesis system, something could be scanned on a Monday morning and technically the PO could go to the vendor automatically without any human interaction within a few minutes. From a financial perspective, me as speaking as an accountant, and we have full visibility of the supply chain. We have real-time stock levels, real-time stock valuation. So that's always, as opposed to the year end, once a year that you will do with your external auditors just to get a stock take done. As we spoke about, electronic recall management is available for patient safety at the click of a button. Electronic scanning of consumables and implants to patients. So we scan everything. Some hospitals just choose the kind of the more expensive implants, but we actually scan all consumables. If it's a suture, if it's a procedure pack, whatever it is, if it has a barcode and it's been used in a point of care, we will scan it. And then we were highly reliant on external vendors for using their systems. So now we can track we don't have to go to some of our vendors who might have tracked some of the products for us and ask them for reports. All that reporting and all that control is held on our database and within our systems. So I suppose I spoke briefly about orthopedics. Tallaght University Hospital has a large orthopedic specialty. It's made up of hips and knees. That's kind of like the large majority of what we do on the non-trauma side. But then we also have the whole trauma side, which is as you can see there, it's a lot of screws, a lot of small little products, and very similar and large ranges. So our orthopedics, which went live around 14 months ago and has been a huge success. As I said, it from the master data requirements and the master data challenge, which took us like maybe 8-9 months to get a handle on. It was our biggest challenge, but also our biggest success to date. Some of the challenges, the top of the screen here, you'll see is a Striker product, a Striker screw, and it's a sterile product. So it has the full G-tin, the lot, the expiry. So from a scanning perspective, it's really good. It just scans and we no issue. It also has the combination of the 2D barcode and the regular barcode. So it's kind of like the perfect scenario for each product that you want. But not all products are like that. Our Johnson & Johnson trauma products, a lot of the products come in non-sterile. So they only have 2 of the 3. They only have the G-tin and they have the lot as well. But they don't actually have the expiry because they're non-sterile. And you can see it's like a 12mm screw. So very small items and very similar in ranges and huge ranges. And so as I said, the orthopedics was a big challenge for us. As John alluded to earlier on, before we went live in orthopedics, we had one product on our SAP system, which we would use to order, and we would give quarterly, half-yearly purchase orders to our vendors with just what we call the generic bucket code. And as I said, so after we went live, we now have proper master data in place, all G-tins, all set up, and we now have 5,520 orthopedic products alone. So we've gone from 1 to 5,520. So from this, that's so important in so many ways, whether it's pricing compliance, whether it's compliance from a financial perspective, visibility, you name it. Having that detail now is huge. So as I said, 1 to 5,520. John.
Thanks, Dave. And just to mention there as well, you see the difference between sterile and non-sterile, and we're in transition where our vendors now to nearly move to a completely sterile solution, just to mention that. So, sorry, quick. Yeah, so this is the Scan4Safety process, the process map. So it starts off, the product scans to the patient. It then goes through our Genesis ordering system and straight into our SAP finance system for an order to go to the vendor. The goods are delivered then back to the hospital, taken into the goods inwards. They're booked in by our team, Scan4Safety team, booked back in on our Genesis system, and the automated file goes straight to Genesis. And then it goes back around again to the products being scanned by the nurse, and the cycle starts again. Here we've just got a sample of report from Genesis, so we can get reports on stock levels, expired stocks, signed orders, etc. And this is the handheld used in the hospital, so the nurses use that for scanning, and our team use it as well. Okay, so I won't go into this kind of complicated slide, but this is process re-engineering, BP. This is kind of key feature about looking at the as-is process and then the to-be processes. So one of the first processes we looked at was a spinal procedure in theatre. So I went into the procedure to watch what happened. I was kind of surprised at the amount of steps involved. So to just go through them quickly, one was create a rec on our SAP system for 3 months done by the nurse. The nurse had to approve the requisition to get us finance to approve it. Step 4 was to create the purchase order. Step 5, in the procedure room, then the rep takes note of what was used. Step 6, the rep steps out and emails the requirements to the office. CCs that to the nurse. The nurse prints off a copy and puts it in a book. Step 7, the goods arrive back in, are checked by the nurse again against the book. Step 8, the goods are put away by the nurse. Step 9, the invoice is put on the system and sent to the nurse for approval. Step 10, approved invoice then sent for price approval with buyer. Step 11, invoice sent for receiving. And step 12, invoice sent for payment. So obviously a lot of steps. So our transition now is down to 5 steps. Goods scanned at the procedure, order generated, goods received, goods put away, invoice matched. So you can see the transition from a 12-step procedure to 5 steps. So I suppose the outcomes, where are we today? So we broke it down to 3 areas: clinical benefits, working capital, which is finance, and efficiency benefits. So we've got 185 hours per week given back to patient care, which is massive. We've ticked the box in relation to clinical risk and safety, expiry management, and recall management. We've stock savings recurring of about 250,000 a year. The reduced stock holding once-off savings about 300,000. So as we went into each area, the amount of stock we pulled out, which was surplus or redundant or no longer used by the areas, was brought back to the warehouse, and total value of that was about 300,000. So we're feeding a lot of that back into the system. We're looking at transference to other hospitals, getting back to suppliers, and maybe jumping if necessary. Then financially, then we reduce expiry and we've identification of slow-moving stock. And then some of the efficiency benefits are improved pricing through purchasing and reduced variation in procedure cost. So the case study is done by GS1 is really good, and it kind of emphasises the importance of the exec support. So here, Dave here is a very senior member of the finance team. We've Lucy Nugent, who's the CEO. And I suppose this is at near the end of the project, and for those to speak positively about the project, it's really good. But it emphasises the importance of having the exec support. So we needed resources or financial support or change approval. This is supported by very top. So sometimes it's nice also to look at the nursing team around the hospital, and some of the posts are quite nice. This is such a dream. I don't need to worry again. We have the products ready for when the consultant arrives. We don't have to wait as long for stock to come in as we're scanning. It's highlighting that we're using something, so it's always on the shelf. We are beside ourselves with joy before we have to do everything manually. We have to spend hours doing, doing stock levels, stock lists, and inputting into the computer and following up with purchasing in stores. GI Labs involved in the role of Scan4Safety and saw it develop into its current stage, which is an efficient and amazing package to assist the employees with the stock management. And then finally, we've got our Director of Finance, Dermot Carter, and he quotes that this will help TUH to reduce waste and improve our working capital. So you can see the feedback from our team around the hospital is very encouraging.
Okay. So just some sample reports from our Genesis system and kind of just examples of what we've spoken about in the previous slides. Expired stock is always an issue for us. So this is an example. So we can manage our stock much better now, and expiry dates. We can be proactive in managing our products that are due to expire over the next few months, and we have full visibility of what's due to expire. And in the previous world, we didn't know what happened to the expired product, because well, it could have just got binned for all we know, because we weren't in control of it. We had no visibility. So again, this gives us huge visibility. Again, this tab is just a Genesis tab, but again, it can show us that we can drill in and see what, on any specific location. Here we're looking at orthopedics. We can see what's in stock, what's on order, you know, and the value again. So again, just this very useful information, especially for supply chain and finance people who are concerned with this type of thing. Another example here is, because we're using the Zebra TC51 scanner across the hospital, we capture a lot of data as well. We capture the consultant, we capture the date and the time, we capture obviously all the products. We also capture the procedures, so a lot of rich data is there, and it's held electronically, and it's just very powerful data to have. Whether you want to do patient level costing or research or whatever it is that you need, there's a lot of rich information, and the hospital is moving towards an electronic patient record, and this in itself is from a consumable implant perspective is an electronic patient record also. Critical success factors, leadership. It's about patient safety and time back to patients. So again, just to reiterate what we're saying, that working, you know, demonstrating leadership and, you know, really supporting this from the very get-go 4 years ago, and we gave a huge effort to it, and to really get it over the line. And as I said, when the proof of concept worked so well, and the feedback was there from the nursing, ever since then, that was their kind of motivation to actually progress and incrementally roll out across the organisation. The project had strong executive support. You've heard from our CEO in the video. So again, we really really gave us the confidence to push on, because we knew that the CEO and the executive team wanted it. The collaboration I spoke to in the video, and I spoke to today as well, with all stakeholders. It was a quality initiative, and nursing are fundamental in that. As I said, they held the responsibility and the duties previously, so we were taking on that. So we had to make sure that what we were doing was an improvement. But again, it's those three divisions there: nursing, supply chain, and finance. They were kind of essential to it, and they worked very well collaboratively over the last 4 years. Staff were kept engaged throughout ongoing communication, training, and workshops. So whenever we went live in an area, we had training sessions on the 8 o'clock slot on the Thursday morning in theatre. You know, wherever it was, we would bring them down, and we didn't just give them a scanner and say off you go. So a huge amount of training and communication the whole time. Master data, which we spoke about in terms of orthopedics, the preparation of your master data, working with your vendors to make sure that the pricing is correct that you're loading into the system, the GTINs, everything. It's fundamental, master data, in terms of being successful in the rollout. And our vendors were very good. They have all the data anyway, so it was just a matter of getting that data and making sure we cleansed it, and we got it working for us. And again, GS1 Ireland was always there to support wherever we went. As I said, the Scan4Safety team didn't exist 4 years ago. It was a new department, but now we've established ourselves as a standalone department. I suppose we've gone from a very small team to a slightly larger team, but I suppose it's a dedicated, and people know the department now across the hospital. So it's and they're two of our partners, GS1 and Genesis are fundamental in terms of everything we do. Success story.
That's yours.
Again, some of the successes, as we spoke about before, we had a lot of hours back to nursing, and that's why it was rolled out, because the nursing were so positive about what we've given them, and it wasn't just giving the nurses back. We were actually replacing the processes that they had, even though they were time consuming and slow, and they were still safe. But so what we've provided is still a safe alternative, but with a lot more efficiency. Some data emerging from the National Health Service in the UK suggests that moving to a Scan4Safety solution reduces stock holding by 24%. So we've seen some of those efficiency gains and released them to our bottom line in terms of reduced stock holding and stock obsolescence. Regular site visits. So everybody seems to be at different levels in this country and in the UK in terms of, so we seem to have stolen a march, I suppose, in some hospitals, but other hospitals are playing catch up now. But we have entertained other hospitals coming up to the hospital, seeing what we're doing, because they find themselves in a similar situation to where we were maybe 5 years ago, and they want to replicate that. And I suppose we have a good reputation now within the health system, within the health environment, as to what we've done with Scan4Safety, and other hospitals want to replicate that the same way we did when we went to the UK and seen what other hospitals were doing there. As I said, the GS1 case study video was published in summer of 2022, and GS1 noted, and GS1 work with all hospitals in the country. So they noted that what we've done here was one of the best implementations in a hospital setting. And then my colleague John and my colleague Dermot Carter, Director of Finance, they presented at the GS1 Global Healthcare Conference in Paris last November. And then you might have seen the photograph on the slide deck, but our CEO award, the Scan4Safety team, it's an annual award, and for a team that has a truly impactful quality improvement initiative. So that's what was deemed, and it was a nice surprise, and it was really nice recognition to get that from the CEO.
For that, yeah. So these are the stats in relation to, I suppose, where we are today, and I suppose the amount of patients scanned is 48,000, nearly 49,000. We've scanned 400, nearly 500,000 products. The value of the item scanned is nearly 24.4 million. The value of our stock on hand today is 5.3 million, which is made up 2.2 stock, including consignment, and 3.1 non-stock. And then the quantity of material codes managed by Scan4Safety is 10,016. Yeah, so we can move on then. And then we just move on to some pictures there. So we're near the end. I'm sure there's been a lot of data there to throw at you, but just to finish off, this is just after our go live in orthopedics, and you can see me looking very haggard there after a stressful 10 months, but that was, and I suppose that's just the changes in personnel on the team. So it wouldn't have been a success without these amazing people. The people see in the picture there, all the hard work and the support they gave the project and the nursing teams on the wards and in theatres. And I suppose at the end, it's lovely to see that picture. This is where we received the award from the CEO, and see people like the Director General of the HSE, which is the health department for the country. So that's our Director General. We have the Lord Mayor of the region, and of course our fabulous CEO, Lisa Nugent, and we're accepting the award on behalf of the team. So just to say again, the team are amazing, and it always should be recognised as a key component. So I suppose our value is we support the nurses and clinicians, and we're nearly friends with them now. We know them all so well, and they know us, and that's how the project was so successful. So I think, yeah, so we're coming to the end now. So I suppose, where are we now and what do we want to do? So I suppose we have changed the whole ordering process in relation to purchase orders. So from point of care to the company, it takes about a minute, 2 minutes. So we've kind of sorted that issue. Now, how do you get the products back quicker? We're looking at the use of drones possibly. So the whole idea is that an order can be with the company within about 2 minutes. We can have a delivery back to the hospital from 4 or 5 miles in the space of maybe 10, 15 minutes. So that's the next plan. We're always looking at innovation and change and technology. So that concludes our presentation today. So thank you so much to everybody for listening. And we hand you back now to Monica and Sebastian for questions and answers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, John and David, for this really comprehensive and insightful presentation, and for sharing some key highlights of the journey towards enhanced patient care and operational efficiency. Now, I would like to open the floor to the Q&A session, so feel free to ask questions about the implementation process, about benefits, or any related topic. We have experts ready to provide insights and share their experience, so please, let's make this session as interactive as possible. I see some questions already on the chat, so let me start with the first one. The first one is related to the medical devices regulation. And the question is, do you have local rules or regulations on how to follow the medical device regulation, example, Article 27.9? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Yeah, regulations. The EU, obviously, our European agency, the EU would meet and agree on regulations in relation to medical devices. So the key, sorry, go back to that slide in relation to the regulation, the safety aspects. So there is a mandatory requirement for a UDI. So that is the main requirement. And we're also required to have a software system to manage adverse incidents. So Scan4Safety ticks those requirements. In relation to, we also have an agency in Ireland, and I'm sure internationally there's different agencies who will be managing quality and safety. We have the HPRA, and adverse incidents are logged through that agency. But in relation to, we're only, I suppose we're looking at the whole area in Tallaght Hospital around pre-approval of products coming into the organisation, in particular implants. So obviously our consultants will have a huge input in relation to any introductions. So they're constantly reviewing papers and publications, and they also would meet at conferences, etc. So I suppose the safety and compliance, it is a huge issue, and it's something we're constantly reviewing and looking at. But so I hope maybe does that answer the question?
Yeah, just to say, I suppose if a product happens to get used in the hospital and it's not on our Scan4Safety system, we can't pay for it because we need the master data there and the GTIN to flush it through our system to actually pay for it. So I suppose the nature of medicine, there's constantly new products being presented to our consultant all the time, and but I suppose if a company, they can be used on a trial basis, but if the actual product wants to get established within the hospital, that will have to come through the finance and Scan4Safety team, and we will have to get that product set up as master data and a proper barcode and stuff. So we will have visibility that way. But I suppose from a traceability perspective, as I said, we scan everything. So it's not just implants. So we have the full. It doesn't matter if it's a laparoscopic procedure or a orthopedic procedure or a cath lab. We don't differentiate between certain types of products. We literally scan everything.
Great, thank you. Now we have another question related to the IT systems. So the question is, does Genesis have an anesthesia model?
Anesthesia model.
Anesthesia, yeah, it's a good question. Very good question. The challenge around anaesthetics is that the anaesthetic process happens away from where the procedure is happening in the prep room. It's in a separate room. So there's a complexity around capturing that data. But it's our next phase of our project is to look at anaesthetics and how we can capture that data. But yeah, the complication is that the action is happening in a different room. So it's creating a complexity in relation to how the nurses would scan it and taking it from one room to another. But we obviously the anaesthetic team in theatre have looked around and the support and the system, and everybody's very happy. They're kind of say, what about us? So yeah, that is our next. We'll be looking at next, and the plan is that we roll that out as well.
Yeah, anaesthetics for us was always out of scope, so it's not necessarily within the scope of our Scan4Safety rollout. But as John said, we kept it because of the complexity, and but again, we will visit it at some stage to see can we incorporate. But Genesis doesn't necessarily, to my knowledge, doesn't necessarily have a separate anaesthetics module that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. There is another question, and it's well, pretty much answered, but just let me ask you anyway. You have anything to else? The question is: are injectables as anesthetic drugs scanned and traced in theaters? So just if you want to add something else.
That'll be pharmaceuticals, I think, as such. Would that be right? I take it that's the question. No, yeah. Pharmaceutical wasn't in part of our scope, but again, it's something else that's planned to look at in time, and it could be on a new phase.
Yeah, any drugs and medicines wasn't a category that we're incorporating into our Scan4Safety. It's a completely separate kind of entity, and there's a lot of traceability to the patient happening within drugs and medicines as is. So it was out of scope for us. We weren't scanning anything of a drugs and medicine nature to the patient.
Okay, thank you so much. There is another question. Well, there is a congratulations on the chat. It's a great presentation from an anonymous attendees. So the question is related to another technology, RFID. The question is, do you see a need to introduce technologies such as RFID or close control storage cabinets to gain improvements on user compliance associated with scanning versus mode passive tracking solutions? Or does active barcode scanning meet needs of tracking goals?
Yeah, we're having that conversation at the moment, you know, and you know, RFID is a game changer. It does have its own challenges too, and it's more, I think, it would be a better fit for implants. I think, you know, obviously there's a process where the device or the whatever is placed onto the products has to be manually done to capture the RFID. So it's you know, we've seen, you know, some of our companies have shown how impactful it is. The problem is, obviously, there's I suppose an infrastructure issue in relation to RFID for the hospital, so that has to be addressed first. But you know, obviously, it's something we're looking at. It's a possibility, and it's certainly very helpful in relation to, you know, maybe doing stock takes, that kind of piece. But you know, I suppose in effect, the Genesis system is automated and is carrying out that ordering process and replenishment process, and is valuing counting our stock. But certainly, RFID is. It's you know, I suppose, but 10 years ago it was very chunky and it wasn't, you know, it was something that we weren't really looking at, but there has been a lot of advancement, and absolutely that is something we're considering for the future.
Indeed, thank you, John. Now moving to another question from IT to the more human side. Another anonymous attendees is congratulating you for the great presentation, and says, for hospital looking at implementing Scan4Safety, how would you advise to generate the leadership by in your mentioned?
Yeah, I suppose maybe.
May I repeat it? Maybe I repeat it again. For a hospital look, no, yeah, it's fine. I suppose to generate that leadership, I suppose it needs someone to bring, like someone has to take this on, and in our example here, myself and John shared the vast majority of the workload. We were tasked with rolling this out, and so you really need to, as I said, it needs to be kind of given the approval from your executive management team or your CEO, whoever making the decision, that and it needs to be accompanied by a business case, and then it needs a dedicated small team of multifunctional team, multidisciplinary team to actually make it happen. And I would say start small, start with you know, a specific area, and you know, see can you get it going in a specific area, and that's what we did. We started really small. We didn't know where the road was going to take us, and we were very upfront with everybody, and we were communicating. And I suppose if you have good people dedicated and who have a bit of energy and can bring a bit of energy to a project, and you start small and you have some small gains, some small wins, and then if you can get a proof of concept signed off, and then what we found was the demand was so strong from the other parts of the organization, it was just a no-brainer, if you will, that we just rolled this out as quickly as we can. And obviously we had a couple of COVID years in between. We could have rolled it out possibly quicker, but COVID delayed us a bit. But there's no substitute for maybe good people, hardworking, intelligent people, trying to get things over the line. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. There's another question. It says, what top 3 benefits do you identify as your key goals as you started the proof of concept?
Well, I suppose one of the things we had to, as I said, I alluded to in the car, we had to make sure whatever we were implementing was better than what they had already. And so that for me, it was like, we knew we had a kind of an inefficient process, and it was very labor kind of heavy on the labor and paper based and stuff like that. So we knew that even though this was digital, it still had to work. So for me, because, and I'm an accountant by background, and I suppose the whole supply chain was new, relatively new to me, and when you work in supply chain, it's so critical having the product on the shelf. So our kind of everything we do, we make sure that the product is on the shelf at any time. So we just can't have any kind of failure in that scenario. So for me, it was a safety perspective. And sometimes we might have carried too much stock over the last 4 years when we were trying to get a handle on levels and whatnot. But for me, it was patient safety and always having that product on the shelf. And so the nurses had to scan, and when the nurses scanned, the technology had to do what it's doing. And generally speaking, when the scan is done in the first instance, everything flows because we're so confident on the master data. We do so much testing of the master data so we found whatever we did, it has to be better than what was gone before, because what went before it worked. So that was always to the forefront in my kind of motivation and my decision making.
Yeah, I think I'm nearly 40 years in the health sector now, and a lot of that time, I suppose, all the time we spent effectively in hospitals, and I'm in behind the scenes watching what goes on. And like, in particular, open theatre for years, I used to watch, and the nursing and the clinical teams, consultants, trying to treat patients and help people. And then I watched them running out, trying to open boxes and put stuff away and taking phone calls, ringing companies. You know, it never sat right with me. So to me, this is a no-brainer. So when I heard this project was happening, I was delighted. And the evidence is there. You can see the feedback coming from the nurses and the teams. They're delighted. So I suppose the three, if you ask the three, I suppose the support nursing, visibility to the systems, you know, financial, etc., and the safety aspects. So that's what they'd be my three key objectives.
Thank you, John and David. Yes, absolutely. And the supply chain has been always hidden, as you mentioned, John, but after COVID especially, I think now it's on the forefront and a priority for all hospitals. Yes. So now we are moving to GDSN. This is a GDSN question. So the question is, how easy or otherwise was it to get your vendors to provide you with the needed master data for all products?
Yeah. So questions are excellent. That's very pertinent. So as Dave alluded to, the quality of our master data was crucial. So effectively, you know, you take our orthopedic project where we one code, we had no data. So it was all about prepping spreadsheets and creating a spreadsheet that was going to be fit for purpose for us to load data, and then to get that to the vendors and get those to populate that data back to us in the right format. So that was a huge exercise, and it's about finding the right people in the organizations. So I suppose I'm personally in supply chain, you know, I've worked in Tallaght 25 and as I say nearly 4. So I know a lot of the vendors, a lot of the contacts, and, you know, I suppose some companies were slow getting that data back and so on, but generally, if you make a phone call to somebody in the company, they're generally helpful, and they'd be proactive about getting the data back to us. But it was so, you know, I suppose there was a lot of master data loaded in the 4 years, and a lot was spot on and very successful. And then we had some challenges as well. And the lessons were where we did maybe load some data that wasn't correct, the problems that caused. So it was lessons learned for ourselves in a way on the journey. So we're nearly experts in the master data field now about the requirements. And they, being an accountant, you know, the validation, you know, I suppose I'm not an accountant. I'm kind of, let's go with this and let's get moving. But they was brilliant in relation to, you know, viewing the data, watching for mistakes, you know, validation, you know. So that part was, you know, as a team. And I suppose we had a person on our team, Kathy, who was coming from a SAP implementation background, you know, and her expertise was excellent. I mean, with some super people on the master data team. So to be fair, every vendor was supportive on the journey and did provide the data we needed. So, you know, the question, I suppose the answer to the question is obviously challenges, but it did work in the end.
And just to say, before we load any, we kind of have a process now in place that any new master data we load, even for a range of maybe 5, 10, 15 products, we actually do that as a team, and we all sit in the room together and we sense check to make sure there's no issues with the data. Certain things like the, you know, terminology, like we have consignment products, but the vendor mightn't necessarily refer to as consignment, you know. So we've had some issues, you know. So we have, but when we load data now, we sit as a team and we sense check the data, and we just have a half an hour session before we load anything, because we're constantly loading. as you can appreciate, there's ranges that's like, you know, a big company like Johnson & Johnson, they'll stop a range of products and they'll supersede that range with a new range. So every couple of months we might have to load 50, 100, 200 products into the system. And, you know, we have to make sure, you know, the descriptions are right, the units of measure, the VAT, the tax rate, the VAT rate. So all that type of stuff has to be right. And otherwise it causes huge issues on the other side in terms of if that gets into your system and it's wrong. So we're very kind of conscientious on the master data and very careful before we load anything.
Absolutely. And maybe the last question, we are on time now. So, and related to suppliers as well, the question is that you have said that you're asking all suppliers, you are requiring them to provide GTIN. And does this apply to all medication, even on individual single dose units? Or maybe this is something to consider in the future?
Well, in relation to pharmaceutical, it was out of scope, so I can't answer that. I'm not a part of the pharmaceutical process here in Tallaght Hospital. My own view is that, and I know it's mandatory now for a single identifier, but I think all GTINs should be mandatory at this stage. You know, particularly we're moving down the road of technology and traceability, you know, and Sean Duggan and GS1 team have been very supportive around this piece, but every product should have a GTIN and a barcode. Like, you're not going to any of the supermarkets to buy your groceries that don't have a barcode. So the medical professionals have been slower getting on that journey, but the amazing work done by GS1 and Siobhan and the team and Amanda, you know, is promoting the whole concept around GTINs and the importance. So I'm not familiar on drugs and drugs and pharmaceuticals, but certainly on medical, you know, I feel it should be mandatory that they're part of the packaging.
Okay, thank you. And maybe just to conclude, one last question. In terms of lessons learned, would you have done anything differently? Any recommendation for the people listening today that they should especially consider?
Good question. Reflection, I suppose. Do you know what? I suppose every large project like that, it's like life. You know, would you do anything different again? We've learned some lessons like around master data. I think in relation to working with the nurses and the teams, I have no regrets on that side. I think that worked really, really well. We never an argument or a challenge. We worked really well. Still have that good relationship today. You know, you look at you know, I suppose the scope, and you know, maybe you could even do it anesthetics as part of what we did. It's debatable. But I have to say, you know, I suppose the lesson learned is that the people aspect to our team, people will leave and people move on. But I suppose it's important that, you know, the recruitment is huge on a you know, a successful team, and bringing the right people, the right fit, and we'd be lucky enough to do that. But I think I don't know you, Dave.
No, I just like, I suppose we've had multiple rollouts over the last 4 years, and we spent so much time on the master data before rollouts that on our first few rollouts we kind of we did the stock take and we gave the nurses the scanners and away we went. But the validation from our side post rollout wasn't great, you know. So we kind of learned lessons. Sometimes we got caught out with a few products. So what we do now, we have quite a robust validation process for each rollout. So we for the first month or so, first 6 weeks, we effectively look at everything that was scanned, and we make sure that that's all filtering through the system the way we expect it to do. And because sometimes if it box isn't ticked on a certain product or master data is slightly out, it won't automatically generate. So we pay a lot more attention to detail post rollout now in terms of validation exercise that we do for like 6 weeks after each area that we roll out. So that was something we probably should have been doing from our first rollout, but with experience, you kind of sometimes you have to get burnt a couple of times to change your behavior, you know. So that was just some experience that we had.
Okay, so thank you very much for your wise advice. Unfortunately, time has run out today very quickly. So I would like really to thank you, David and John, for generously sharing your experience and expertise in the implementation of the Scan4Safety project at Tallaght. And also special thank you to our colleagues from GS1 Ireland, Siobhan and Amanda, for your support and contributions in making this project accessible to our global community. We have seen today the real-world impact of Scan4Safety and GS1 standards, not as a mere solutions, but as catalysts for profound change. Clinical benefits, working capital improvements, efficiency gains aren't just statistics. They represent increased patient safety and a healthcare system that's more efficient. As we wrap up this webinar, let's carry forward the inspiration from Tallaght University Hospital journey. Let's take the lessons learned here and apply them to our institutions, knowing that we have the tools and the knowledge to drive the positive change we want to make. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your engagement, your questions, your insights. The journey doesn't end here. It continues in each of your hospitals and healthcare organizations. Goodbye, take care, and stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.